Hello. It was a wonderful exhibition. Everybody knows about Dalai Lama, but starting from the history, starting from his young age and the photographs, it was amazing. I know about Dalai Lama, and a lot of my friends know about Dalai Lama, the places he has visited, the people he has met, and this was reaffirmation that he's such a great personality and loved by all the world leaders. Now I wish that the next time when you come, along with this pictures you have, I would also like to see Tibetan artifacts and Tibetan fashion, prayer wheels. So all in all, a great experience, and I'm very overjoyed that you guys have come here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Supriya Matthew. I'm the Vice President International Affairs at Dayananda Sagar University in Bangalore. So I'm very excited by this initiative of Tibetan Museum at Dharamshala, as well as the Dalai Lama Institute of Higher Education, that they have brought this photo exhibition depicting the life of Tibetan culture, Buddhist culture and His Holiness Dalai Lama to showcase to our students. Personally, I am a person who is very excited and who is very intrigued by the monks and by how the Tibetans function. It's a very peaceful religion. So my intention to bring this along with the Tibetan Museum and the Institute of Higher Education of Tibetan Studies was to showcase to the students that how embracing the good things about this culture would be such a big learning for them in an environment when they are struggling with so much of stress. Together with these two institutions, we are building a future collaboration where we would be inviting students from PhD and Tibetan studies to come and do their PhDs at Dayananda Sagar University, and we would be doing more and more of cultural events with them so that we showcase to India the Tibetan culture through Dayananda Sagar University. Thank you very much.
Namaste. I'm Professor Dinesh Kulkarni. I head the Design and Digital Transmedia at Dayananda Sagar University. It gives me immense pleasure to invite one of the representatives of world's oldest tradition, the Buddhism, which started in 5th century BC. When I look at Tibet, both Hinayana, Mahayana and Vajrayana form of tradition is practiced, and what originated in India in Kapilvastu near Nepal, okay, now that it has spread to so many countries, and this purest form of Hinduism was the rich legacy was kept intact in the high mountains of Himalayas. I'm profoundly thankful, in spite of you facing immense challenges in the cultural revolution. You as a people are so resilient, and you are able to protect the culture. My respects to Honorable Dalai Lama. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Sai Prasad. I am the Dean of the College of Journalism and Mass Communication at Dayananda Sagar University. I am very happy to be visiting the museum and the cultural display of the Tibetan culture at Dayananda Sagar University in Harohalli. The pictures, the images and the stories that we see here tell us what a great civilization the Tibetan civilization has been in their own homeland, and now currently living in India. And there is a lot of commonality between Indians and the Tibetans in terms of their values, their culture, their traditions, and the way they practice their religion. And we are so happy that the Tibetan people, the great people of Tibet, have found Karnataka as their second home, and they live here with us in harmony, and they are enjoying the freedom and livelihood that they did not get back in Tibet. It's a very happy moment, and I'm very happy to note that a lot of students are interested, and they are actually going around the stalls, looking at the pictures and getting to know about the culture. I think all of us should know that there is a lost history in all these pictures. There are some stories that I think as Indians we all should know because we share a lot of cultural commonalities with them. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm sure going forward a lot more people will want to come and watch this, and I'll be personally happy to invite them over to the journalism school to interact with the students and probably even make a visit to their museum someday. Thank you very much and all the best.
Namaskar, I am Dean. I am Professor 𝐿𝐴𝐿, Dean of Research at Dayananda Sagar University. It's a great to see the innovations and the relationship between Tibet and India. We are happy to have more research collaboration between the universities in Tibet as well as with India, and also with Dayananda Sagar University. We will support all the international scholars for their research, and we will provide good research support for them to come up very well in their life for both full-time and part-time. Thank you very much.
Myself Bhuvan, CSC Core, Dayananda Sagar. It's nice to know about this event, and we got to learn more about this event, about the cultures of Tibet and the relationship with other countries. It's nice to know, and I hope other college mates also know more about this event and get to know about Tibet. I guess this relationship between India and Tibet also can be good in future days also, and it's nice to know about the Tibet.
Okay, good afternoon, and with the salutation to 𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴 Buddha, 𝐜𝐮𝐥𝐭𝐤𝐡 예수네 따와탐주 봉화치 담배춘이 뜬주고 고담델라 차세로스. So indeed, we as the Tibet Museum is honored to be invited and talk about our own life, our own culture, history. So let me briefly talk to you about Tibet. How many of you know Tibet? Very good. There are a lot of them. So can you tell me why Tibet is called third pole in the world? You know North Pole? You know South Pole? Right? These are the two, Antarctica and Arctic Ocean, right? These are the two poles. But apart from that, Tibet, as I have shown you, is the largest glacier reservoir in the world. Around 64,000 glaciers are there in Tibet. 64,000. And out of that, scientists have predicted by 2060, almost half of them will be melted. And Tibet to you is around 4,300 meters above the sea level, right? And that's why rightly known as the third pole of the world, and it is known as the roof of the world. And we here in India and Southeast Asia, around 2 billion people are directly or indirectly dependent on this. Another thing is, we all know sooner or later we'll have a conflict on water. Many people predict that the Third World War would be war related to water. We already witness here in South India, and we are witnessing more in around the world. So why Tibet is important? We as a Tibetan are just 6 million. We are very, very few. But in terms of resources, in terms of the rivers, in terms of the glaciers, we are the source to many Southeast Asian countries. And you already see there are more than 11 countries and around, as I said, 2 billion people which are directly dependent on this. And this Yangtze River that you see, it is the largest and the longest river in Asia, 6,350 kilometers. And it is longest in the third longest in the world after River Nile and Amazon. So Yellow and Yangtze are on which the Chinese civilization has built. And likewise, They are Mekong, Salween, and for India particularly, Brahmaputra, Ganga, Sutlej, and Indus. These are the lifeline. These are the rivers on which entire Indian civilization, Mohenjo-daro, you name it, it's already there, right? And the problem is we lost our country in year 1959. In last 60 years, Chinese have built 87,000 dams. 87,000 dams. China is the largest dam builder in the world. 3 times the dam that United States have built. And in Tibet, particularly in Tibet, they are now building a lot of dam. We already witnessed after 2018 Doklam, problem with India and China. China have started building 3 dams right at the Yalung-Tsangpo, that is the Brahmaputra. So this is now things that the Chinese have been using as a political war. What I'm trying to say is Tibet, when it was free, we don't have any restriction. Because we consider this, rivers, mountain, lakes as our mother. So there is a deep-rooted culture which respect these natural resources. Then this is just replica of that. So I've already talked about it. So, and one of the heaviest dam is the Mekong Dam, which runs through the Laos, Cambodia, and Thial Highland. There are 770 dams which already built, and by 1 decade we'll see 1,000 dams already building in this Mekong rivers that flow from Tibet. And this is pretty important because, as I said, in 1949, China became Communist Party. Before that, China was a nationalist country. It became communist under the Mao Zedong, the regime of Mao Zedong. So during that time, China is the red one. You see, the China is the half that is actually right now. It's less than half. So after 1949, they looked at expansionist policy, and then this all other neighboring countries are occupied by China. It is not occupation of land only. It is occupation of more than that. It is occupation of culture. It is occupation of tradition. And most important is occupation of environment. And we are already witnessing the consequences of this occupation. So I'll not take much on because I am from the Tibet Museum, so I'll talk you a little bit very quickly. So this is Tibet Museum. We built in year 2000 with His Holiness Dalai Lama, and this is what we do as a museum. 3 fundamental ethos that we follow, and these are the collections. We do a lot of collection because for the displaced community like us, keeping our memory alive is very important. We are just 1.3 lakh Tibetan outside Tibet, and inside Tibet there are more than 99% of Tibetan inside Tibet. So all of us 1.3 lakh Tibetan are actually the ambassador, are actually the voice for the those who are oppressed inside Tibet. So these artifacts, this true narrative of the object, we have the only authority to tell that. Sometimes we don't see the reality of that. So that is exactly what is happening, and we are here to restore and preserve and tell the true narrative. That's very important, because across the world, the narration is always dominated by the superior or the occupying or the power which are in power. But we need to preserve the truth. That's really, really important. So these are a few of the things that we do, and these are the ways and means to elongate and sustain the stories, the objects. And this is what exactly we do whenever we get, because all of them are donated by the Tibetan who are living in Mongut, who are living in Hunsur, who are living in abroad. Sooner we will try to authenticate as soon as possible. So this is very important. So these are the documentation that we usually take. And these are the third pillar is, after collecting and conserving it, we need to tell the story. We need to make sure that our younger generation will get the authentic, true story. So these are the ways and means where we can, talk. These are the few of the traveling exhibition. So you have already witnessed two out of it. You see the India-Tibetan relationship. You saw, His Holiness Dalai Lama biography. And these are the people who have self-immolated inside Tibet. So as of now, we have 157 who have burned themselves inside Tibet. And out of that, 136 have already lost their life. It is pretty strange sometimes, across the world, when we have one self-immolation in Tunisia, it gives birth to the Arab Spring. And when we have one self-immolation in Thailand, it give rise to a new revolution. But how many lives we have sacrificed inside Tibet, and it's not going to change. It's still not changed. So that's that. Most of them are, the average age is around 30 to 35 years. And these are the few of the photos of our traveling exhibition, and we have exhibited across the world, mostly in India. And this is another thing that I know all of you are engineer, but in future if you want to pursue the exhibition, because exhibition is not only for the artist, it can be of any type. We welcome exhibitionists and the particularly on the related to Tibet. So in future, if you think you have some artifacts, some of the collections which are related to Tibet and the Buddhism, we host around 2 to 3 months in Dharamshala, so you can connect with me. And then then I'm going to show you, because as I don't want to be monologue. I don't want to bore you. I know you already have a lot of lecture in the morning. So I'll show you a small clip on how His Holiness Dalai Lama reincarnation is being found. Anyone know about it? Anyone have any idea what is the procedure of reincarnation? What is the procedure of finding the Dalai Lama? Any one of you have any idea? Yes? Can we have a mic to her? Huh?
The process, I'm not sure if it is correct, but I'll try my best.
Yes, yes.
The procedure is that there will be some objects kept, and we have to differentiate the real objects and the fake objects. The one who will find out all the real objects will be the next Dalai Lama.
Can we have a big round of applause to her, young lady? Thank you so much. So what she said is exactly true, but this is just one of the small aspect of finding the Dalai Lama. So most of the people thought have the feeling that the Dalai Lama is chosen, but it is incorrect. Dalai Lama is never been chosen. He has always been found. There is a lot of analytical methods. There is a lot of logic behind how he is being found. Some of the clues are left by the previous Dalai Lama, where the next Dalai Lama would be. And some, as she rightly mentioned, they are, the test which the young boy have to do. So we will briefly, we'll show you a clip which is 10 minutes of animation from the book of the Man of Peace. So I think that will give you light of the procedure.
Nationalist China refuses to ratify Britain's treaty with Tibet. Tibet is forced into seclusion from the outside world. Its recognition as a nation blocked by both China and Britain. In 1924, Mongolia is invaded by the Russian Red Army with the help of Mongolian communists. In 1932, the Great 13th prophesies a grim future for Tibet.
It will not be long before we find the red onslaught at our own front door. And when that happens, I must be there, old enough to defend my people. Otherwise, our spiritual and cultural traditions will be completely eradicated.
Communism is established in Mongolia, and Buddhism is destroyed. In 1921, the Chinese Communist Party is founded. So, the great 13th Dalai Lama decides to die ahead of time to allow time for his reincarnation to grow up to serve as leader during the coming existential crisis of Tibet. Having established independence in the modern nation system and overseen 20 years of peace and prosperity, the man whom all Tibetans see as a bodhisattva of compassion incarnate consciously dies in 1933 at the age of 57. Buddhists believe that sentient beings are endlessly reborn under the causal influence of their evolutionary actions in previous lives, their karma. Here, Yama, the Lord of Death, holds the wheel of life in his mouth. The traveler in the between state falls into the cosmos driven by greed, the cock, delusion, the pig, and hatred, the snake. Only wisdom can break the chain of karma and give freedom from the suffering of the unenlightened life. An enlightened bodhisattva is a heroic being who vows to become a Buddha to free all beings from suffering. In Tibet, accomplished spiritual teachers have perfect wisdom, so can reincarnate consciously, choosing the circumstances of their next lives. Considered a Buddha emanation, a tulku is recognized while still a child. In keeping with tradition, the Dalai Lama's body is placed in state, facing south toward the Buddha's birthplace in India. His body does not decay. It lingers in a state of meditative preservation, which only the highest lamas can achieve. Then, overnight, something unexpected and astonishing happens. On a wooden pillar at the northeastern corner of the shrine near the body sits in state, a strange fungus suddenly appears.
Just since yesterday, his head has turned. What can this mean?
Following the sign, they run outdoors to look towards the northeast.
Look there, in the northeast.
To their amazement, they see an unseasonal flock of geese heading off into the distance toward the 𝐿𝐴mdo province. Curious cloud formations are observed from Lhasa in the northeast above the Potala Palace, shaped like the strange fungus or the Sanskrit syllable A.
Look, Mother!
Wow, never before have I seen such a sight.
The High Lama, appointed by the 13th Dalai Lama, the young Reting Rinpoche, serves as regent, his first duty to find the new Dalai Lama reincarnation.
Perhaps the sacred lake will give us guidance.
He consults with 𝐿𝐴chung, the state oracle, as to the significance of these signs.
His Holiness is born anew. Look to the northeast.
The regent and his retinue of advisors set out on a pilgrimage to the sacred lake of Lamulhatso, where the future may be discerned. The regent sees, shimmering in the lake, 3 Tibetan letters, A, Ka, Ma.
What on earth? I see it so clearly in my mind.
The vision changes to a distant monastery with roofs of green and gold, and in the nearby village, a simple house, its roof bordered with turquoise tiles. 1936, Tibet's northeastern province of 𝐿𝐴mdo. Since the breakup of the Manchu Empire, local Chinese warlords have asserted control, But in small farming communities such as the village of 𝐿𝐻𝐻, the Chinese have little influence. All the Tibetan people are faithfully Buddhist, owing their allegiance to the high lamas of the local monastery and to the government in Lhasa. The people turn their prayer wheels, praying for the birth of the new Dalai Lama. Not far from the village is the house of a farmer, 𝐄𝐱𝐡𝐢𝐛𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐧𝐠, his wife 𝐫𝐢𝐜𝐡, and their 7 children, who raise animals, yaks, horses, sheep and goats, and make a modest living, growing fields of barley, buckwheat and potatoes. The house is considered blessed because some years ago, the firstborn son, 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐻, was discovered to be a reincarnated Lama, a tulku, who went away to be educated as a monk in the monastery of Kumbum. 𝐄𝐱𝐡𝐢𝐛𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐧𝐠 and his next 2 sons, 𝐵𝐢𝐿𝐻𝐻 and 𝐿𝐵𝐷𝐻 Samten, love to raise and trade horses.
This, my boys, is the finest and the fastest.
𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐡 is much loved and is well known for her kindness and generosity.
Here, it's all I have, but you must eat.
The youngest child, 𝐿𝐻𝐻, who attains his goal by the grace of the goddess, is often cared for by his elder sister, 𝐶𝐻𝐻 Dolma.
Eat, little one.
One day, spring plowing is interrupted by travelers from the southwest.
You are our honored guest. We wish only to stay the night.
The High Lama is received as the guest of honor and prostrates himself to the Buddha. In the kitchen, the party meets the family.
And who's this?
𝐿𝐻𝐻 asks for the rosary around the man's neck.
Mine.
Yes, my child, if you can tell me who I am.
You are the Dalai Lama.
Right? Then who is this other Lama here?
Oh, this is 𝐿𝐵𝐷, the groom.
Right again, my child. This is 𝐿𝐵𝐷.
We have reason to believe that your son is a tulku.
Revealing himself to be the High Lama of Sera Monastery in Lhasa and having exchanged robes and hat with his servant to test the boy, 𝐿𝐻𝐻 Rinpoche requests permission of the parents to return with another delegation.
Take me with you.
A few days later, a much larger search party returns.
Oh, here they come again.
First, our eldest, now another.
Having chosen the personal rosary of the last Dalai Lama, the child undergoes further tests.
You can have it this time, my child.
He ignores the larger drum in favor of the last Dalai Lama's smaller one.
He drums just the way we drum during prayers.
He even chooses the walking stick which the Dalai Lama preferred.
This one.
The visions of the regent have been realized and all the signs have been fulfilled. The letter A referred to the region of Amdo, the letter K to the large monastery of Kumbum, whose roofs are of green and gold, both Ka and Ma to the nearby monastery of Karma Sharzong Ritru, high on the mountain above the village. The boy has been found in the house with turquoise tiles.
Oh, fortunate ones. Your young son has been confirmed as an incarnate Lama of the highest order.
Yet again, we are indeed blessed.
Word is sent by telegraph to Lhasa via China and India that the new Dalai Lama appears to have been found. Word returns that he should be brought to Lhasa immediately. But Ma Bufang, the Chinese warlord, who has become the local governor, must be consulted. The mission is explained and he is asked for permission to depart.
So, you wish permission to take the farmer's child to Lhasa?
He demands that the young tulku be brought before him for his own inspection. It is explained that the boy is only one of many possible candidates.
He is the chosen one. I can see it.
The governor demands a ransom of 100,000 Chinese yen before he will allow the journey to begin.
The immigration fee is paid in full, Your Excellency.
Paid in full? They would not pay so much and so readily were it not the Dalai Lama himself. I need 3 times as much.
But, Your Lordship, we have no more to pay.
Then let him spend his time in study and meditation until you find it.
Communications with Lhasa appealing for help are now sent directly by messengers taking many long months. It is thought best to avoid the telegraph route through China. The young Tulku and his older brother are sent to join their eldest brother at Khumbu Monastery in hopes of drawing as little attention as possible. It is feared that the nationalist Chinese government, on discovering the situation, might assert its own authority. Life in the monastery is difficult for the 3-year-old. Sometimes it is harsh.
How dare you scatter my book of scriptures?
Sometimes kindness is shown.
Here, my young initiate, would you like a peach?
Even though his brother Lobsang keeps him close company and they play mischievous games together, young Lamutunduk yearns for his parents. Ransom arrives from Lhasa, yet it is only half what the governor demands. But he agrees to take part of the remainder from 2 pilgrims to Mecca, who are promised they will be repaid when they pass through Lhasa. The governor now agrees to allow the 2 young brothers to leave his domain, but still insists that one Lama remain as hostage.
He will be released when I am sent a book of scriptures inscribed in gold and a full suit of clothing worn by the last Dalai Lama.
The delegation finally leaves the young brothers, as all rejoice later when it is learned that a popular revolt has overthrown the governor and the hostage Lama has escaped. 1939. Almost 2 years since he was recognized as an incarnate Lama and just over 4 years of age, Lamutunduk is joyfully reunited with his family for the long-awaited journey to Lhasa. The 2 brothers are carried together in sedan chair. Although the young Tulku has been recognized as the Dalai Lama, it is still deemed best not to make his certain identity known even to his family. The 2 boys nearly topple the sedan chair with the intensity of their wrestling games. All the members of the original search party now join the procession, as well as government officials, the Muslim pilgrims, and great numbers of muleteers and scouts who know the caravan routes across the immensity of Tibet. The caravan travels for 3 months, stopping sometimes at great monasteries along the way, until finally a delegation arrives from Lhasa, confirming by its actions what all had suspected.
Our son is His Holiness himself.
From the plain of Deogutang, the caravan, now grown to a ceremonial procession, leaves for its entrance into Lhasa. Lhasa's joyful people throng the streets to greet and acclaim their new Dalai Lama.
So I hope this small bit of animation gives you some idea about the Indian tradition actually. As in the morning I've been telling to so many students who visited our exhibition, this tradition is actually the birth, the light that came from India, because across the world it is Hinduism, Jainism and the Buddhism which has the concept of rebirth, right? But sadly, at the current situation, Chinese, under the leadership of their communist leader, they are politicizing this so-called reincarnation, because it happened to our second great high spiritual leader, which we called Panchen Rinpoche. So he was founded by His Holiness Dalai Lama, but sadly at the age of 5 he was captured in year 1995, and till now we don't know where he is. So what they did is they captured this boy and the family and the siblings, all of them were captured in year 1995, and for last 30 years we don't know where they are. And they came up with their own version of Panchen Lama, which is the second highest Lama in Tibetan Buddhist hierarchy. So we across the world, particularly the Tibetan Buddhists and the followers of His Holiness Dalai Lama, are very much cognizant and aware that this can happen to the current Dalai Lama as well. And this become a global issue. In one of the interview, the BBC interview with His Holiness Dalai Lama, they asked about this, strategy that Chinese is soon going to use, right? His Holiness was humor and wisdom, and he just answered, first, the Chinese have no authority on this so-called the reincarnation saga, because they are atheist and they are non-believer. This reincarnation is primarily the religious, one need to be strongly adhere to this system. That is number one. Number two is, if they are really interested in finding the reincarnation, they should first go and find the reincarnation of Mao Zedong. Because for the Communist Party, Mao Zedong is the founder and the father of Communist China, for which they call, they are flourishing, they are, becoming the superpower. And then Deng Xiaoping, then Jiang Zemin. Then if they can find these three leaders, then slowly they can have the legitimacy to find me. And thirdly, he said, it is too early to talk about my reincarnation, because His Holiness always says, or he has a dream of staying around 113 years, and he is turning 90 years in 2025. So with this, I am again going to show you a little bit of one very small clip, which is around 5 minutes, which is about His Holiness Dalai Lama's daily routine, right? As a Buddhist monk, how his Vinaya tradition is adhered, So we'll look at it, and probably after that we will close the session. And I think this small visit of a few of the monks and Tibetan here is just to give you the flavor of your own culture, your own tradition, which is from the Nalanda, So we as a Tibetan are the repositories of this great Indian thought.
I had a very beautiful experience. The speaker, he was very passionate and he explained everything really clearly. It was a very informative session. I understood a lot about the politics and relation between China and Tibet. It was very helpful. It was really nice, and there was some stuff about the Lama that was really very informative. It was a really nice session. Thank you.